Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm your host, Charles. Along with me, as always, my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Gloth. How you doing today, Jacob?
I am swell, Charles. How are you?
I'm great. I'm ready to pitch a brand new televisual series for our listeners to enjoy and imagine in our collective brain space. Are you ready to hear me pitch a show?
That's what I'm here for.
A show that has a title and characters and an ending planned.
That is surprising.
That's so much more than I normally do. Usually I just walk in here half-cocked. I don't even, test the microphone. Usually it's not even plugged in. And I just start talking.
That's
just
true.
Start chatting.
Not even a lie.
Not a word of a lie. No lies detected. Just taking a sip of my coffee.
So what do you have for us? You have something exciting? Is it based on a play? Is it based on an obscure comic book character from the 40s?
This is based, it's Death of a Salesman. We did Death of a Salesman, but we're making it into a John Wick style thing. All right? So Imagine Death of a Salesman, but instead of a fat, middle-aged, balding man who's slowly losing his marbles, it's Keanu Reeves, and he's all, in his Johnny Silverhand, full regalia. He's got the robot arm, he's got the cool sunglasses, he's got the hair, everything. And he does a bunch of karate chops on his sons, who he's disappointed with because of their lack of work ethic. Does that sound like a good show to you?
It sounds amazing.
Yeah, right, the greatest show ever made. But that's not what I've got today. We have a steampunk adventure show in a small Nordic island nation that has fallen into disrepair after decades of ice and snow that has stunted the growth of the country and its people. And this show is called The Unforgiven. Alright? So we're gonna do kind of an Indiana Jones meets road trip style show in a weird weird steampunk universe, and they're off this very small island that's based off of an island that I was in real life quite recently. Greenland. It's great. I loved Greenland.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah. And so
I thought it was Iceland, but yes.
It doesn't matter. Does it matter?
Maybe to the people that live there.
Well, you want to know
Besides
something
that, no.
about Iceland? Iceland's entire population is half the size of Glasgow's population. Seriously, I looked it up. It's fucking crazy. Iceland has so few people, and I really liked it, and I thought it was very pretty. And, there's a dog outside. And I want to go back. But the only reason
we should do the podcast there, live from Iceland.
Live from a volcano in Iceland as it's erupting. That's a good idea. Final episode, because we're both dead. Isn't that how you want the show to end?
On a volcano?
In a volcano with both of us dying.
And I hope the only thing that survives the recording, they're going through the the explosion. Mm-hmm. They're going through the debris later, hundreds of years in advance, and all they find is an audio file on a destroyed USB drive. That the only thing that works is that file, and they play it, and they can hear the podcast.
Yes, that would be perfect. That would be.
And it ends right before the explosion hits. Is you're about to tell us something, and it just ends on a cliffhanger.
See that if this podcast was a TV show, that would be the final episode of the TV show. That is this podcast. Fantastic. Absolutely beautiful. Poetic. Unlike this show. Not poetic at all. It's about trying to find treasure in a small Nordic nation in the steampunk universe. So our main character, her name is Genevieve Drix. She's a historian and archaeologist who has become obsessed with uncovering the lost treasure of Ragnar the Unforgiven. She is kind and thoughtful, but has a dark ambition that has caused her to push away everyone who has ever cared for her. Right? So that's our main character. She's a sweet young lady, but she is so obsessed with finding this treasure and gaining the career aspirations that she's worked so hard for. that she's kind of alienated every human relationship she's ever developed with another person that's truly meaningful, in exchange for relationships with people that she thinks will help her on her journey, right? Imagine, I'm thinking for this show, for this character, you have to cast young, but you gotta have some darkness in this character. I would say cast like a Jenna Ortega style person. You know? She's sweet, she's nice, but she's got a little darkness to her that colors her performance in an interesting way, right? So, that's Genevieve Drix. Then we have Captain Romero Dumont, a hard-drinking, hard-fighting sea captain who has sailed to every place in the world, twice. A cynic through and through who is oftentimes proven right, but will eventually find himself fighting for the weak, for the possibility of a better world, right? So that's our second main character. He's a hard man, but maybe he learns a lesson. Maybe everybody has character arcs in this show, like a real television show.
What?
Yeah.
No.
And if you couldn't tell from his name, Captain Romero Dumont, I was just naming characters based off of things that I have in front of me. And so
You never do that. That's crazy.
I was thinking about the Dawn of the Dead, and so I was like, Romero, George A. Romero. So that's how we got the first name, and I have a cup from Cafe Du Monde in front of me. Congratulations. Also, Genevieve Drix.
Never reveal your secrets, Charlie.
There's a Jimi Hendrix
magician's game
picture in front of me, so yeah. And our last main character, certainly not least, Germ, a local who craves the outside world, but now works as a guide for tourists, but decides to join Genevieve in exchange for a job off the island. He is loyal to his friends and to his goals, but he cares little for his home culture, interested instead in finding out about the rest of the world, right? And so he's, he's kind of a little bit of a bumbler, right? He's not the brightest guy in the world, but he's a hardworking dude who really is interested. He wants to go out and explore the world. He doesn't like just being stuck on this sad, backwards Nordic island. This is just for the sake of the story. I'm making it that way. That's not what Iceland was like. Iceland was very nice, and not sad or backwards. Just in case we have any Icelandic listeners, that's just covering my ass if I ever move there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and he's kind of the muscle, right? So Genevieve, she's the brains. Captain Dumont, he's the experienced, and Germ is the muscle, right? So those are our three main characters, and they're gonna be playing off one another as they travel across the island, searching for this treasure, the lost treasure of Ragnar the Unforgiven, a, horrible pirate Viking sort of a guy who killed thousands and thousands of people and hid his treasure somewhere along the island, but have been unable to find it thus far, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm going to give you the little setup of the world. So 70 years ago, a mysterious vessel crashed into London, killing thousands, but containing wondrous technology that advanced transportation, military, academic, and cataloging technology centuries in only a few short decades. Now the world stands on the brink of war, as nations host petty squabbles over resources they don't really need in order to stoke the fires of conflict. A world in disrepair and on the edge of destruction won't stop our intrepid heroes from searching for Viking treasure and the fame that will follow. Right? So this is how we're setting up the steampunkiness of this universe. Because usually in steampunk stuff, they don't really explain how society, move forward in technology so quickly, right? They just kind of say, they just did. But I'm like, that's not super interesting. Aliens, that's how they did it in this universe, right? Just imagine fucking Superman's pod, no Superman in it, but full of iPhones, landed in the middle of London and just blew it up, turned it into a nuke basically, and moved technology forward really, really quickly. So basically, it's the 1800s, but we're at a point in time in which we're basically sort of in the 80s technologically. 80s and 90s technologically, and socially we're in like the 1930s almost. We're about to go into a world war, but way earlier than we should have. Right? And that's our world. These are our characters. Imagine it's still a regular steampunk universe. There's still like everything's made out of brass and copper, all sorts of fun stuff. But there's the occasional LED. And there's like other stuff that you wouldn't truly expect to see in a steampunk universe. Like there's an international information web, right? Which is basically what they call the internet, but they don't call it the internet.
Oh.
And it's like, it's terminals. You connect to a terminal. It doesn't really have keyboards. It's more like writing, and then you scan it, right? And then you send it. But there is like this primitive form of the internet. And so our characters are able to maintain conversations across, continents, right? But the thing about the island, which is the only name it's given, because the people who live on the island didn't know other people existed up until a few hundred years ago, right? They had no idea that there were other people out there, and so they didn't think to come up with a name for the island they lived on. They just call it the island, right? They just called the one city on this island the city. And so everything's kind of named very plainly, and these people, the islanders, have sort of developed a xenophobia. They don't like the outside world, they're not into this technology, it's kind of affecting the way that they live and their culture, and they're getting lots of tourists who come to see the sights, but they don't really like the tourists, but they need them for money and trade, But the islanders are very much a closed-off people. They don't want anything to do with the outside world, and they're all taught as they were from a very young age that the outside world is evil. But Garum is kind of, he's not into that idea as much, and I haven't really come up with a tragic backstory for him. Maybe he had a tragic backstory, maybe he didn't. Maybe his mom is like an outsider and his dad is an islander, right? And so he's got like kind of that like of both worlds sort of a thing going on. But he could just be a regular guy, just both his parents are islanders, but he wants to know. He's interested in the outside world. And so he got a job as a tourist guide, but he doesn't really like it because he has to deal with just the dumbest fucking people. Because that's all tourists are. Stupid. I'm saying this as a proud tourist. We're dumb people. We have to be. Because only dumb people want to put themselves in situations that are really uncomfortable for the sake of learning. But he has to deal with dumb people, and he's just so sick of it. And so he's looking for a way out. And then Drix arrives. So I'm gonna read to you. We're gonna go over the pilot, and then we're gonna go and talk about the full series and what's going on throughout the whole show. Because there's gonna be twists and turns. Like I said, it is a road trip show at the end of the day. And so you can't really just have one goal being the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry if I stumble on reading any of this. This is the first pitch I've written fully in cursive, and so there will be a little bit of a...
I really hope you can't even read the first word. Like, it's just terrible. You've got to come up with everything on the fly because you can't read your own handwriting.
That would be... Listen, I'll be honest with you, it's not the first time it happened. Probably won't be the last time it's happened. I've done that before more than once. What can I say? I like to play it fast and loose. A woman stares out at the fog-cloaked island. Blood-red sands frame the coast, and as it comes into view, a wall of islanders stare back at her. As the boat docks, Captain Dumas explains that the people who live here don't like outsiders. The world keeps moving forward, but the island never changes. Genevieve is scared but determined, and after a look of quiet reflection and hesitation, she picks up her bags and walks confidently into town. Garum is showing tourists around the island, a look of disappointment across his face as the same questions are asked for the umpteenth time. He retires to a local bar and drinks the night away. That is until Genevieve barges in and begins asking for a guide. After a few minutes of being ignored, she begins to wave a wad of cash at the wrong characters, again demanding for a guide. But instead of ignoring her, they start to pay her mind. Where was it? Oh yeah. Garum, having paid his tab, grabs the cash and pulls her aside. The mercs back down, knowing that he is not someone to be messed with. Drix explains that she's on the search for the treasure of Ragnar the Unforgiven that has been lost for centuries. Garum dismisses the treasure as a myth, but Genevieve explains that a new invention from the University of Budapest allows for the detection of a specific type of metal that the treasure was mostly made out of. And there is a massive spike towards the southern point of the island. Germ reluctantly agrees to the mission as long as she takes him off the island with him. Drix agrees, but on the condition that she can bring her research team. Captain Romero Dumont is in the middle of a bare-knuckle boxing match, and he is losing badly. Jerem and Genevieve walk into the match as she continues to explain that he is one of the best seamen alive. He sailed the world over a dozen times and faced down things that would make a lesser man shriek in terror. So we've got this beautiful scene of them like walking through the match, there's tons and tons of people, and she's like giving him this huge, epic, build up, like he's the coolest guy who's ever lived. He is then brutally beaten down into the dirt. Garum is unimpressed with the display that Captain Dumont has made. After they're able to pick him up out of the dirt and sober him up, Dumont congratulates Genevieve for tricking some moron into being her guide. Then, Genevieve and Garum share a very meaningful glance at one another as he begins to reevaluate his decision to show them around the island. Where was I? Oh, yeah. Then they all retire to a dingy inn. Genevieve dreams of the journey's success. Garum dreams of the outside world, and Captain Dumont dreams of drink and women. The next morning, they all set off onto their grand adventure. That's our pitch. That's our episode 1.
That's the whole thing? Okay, well, thank you for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I'm Jake, your co-host.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, is that on it?
No, it is. Come on, you were doing so good. Let's cut this shit out. Let's go. We're done.
Yeah, cut the fat. Let's go, man.
Yeah, okay. So that's the episode. That's the first episode. It's just introducing our characters and kind of giving our sort of dual perspectives that we're working with in the show. We're looking at the world from Gurm's perspective, who he's very much like a realist. He's like down in the dirt. He's been here for years and he knows every inch of this island and the city and all of the scum that live here. Even though they're not in a city right now. They're in a very small town. But there is a city in the island, which will be important later. And then we have Genevieve's perspective, which is one of a much higher, falutin ideas. She's all about adventure and exploring and learning about this strange new place that she's never been to before, And so that's kind of our two perspectives that we're working with. And then we have Captain Dumont, who is he's just a drunk and he's just like a hard fighting man, And I cast Genevieve with what's her name? Wednesday Addams. What's it called? What's her name? Jenna Ortega. There you go. I got it. So I feel like I kind of want to cast the other two characters before we get on to the rest of the show. Right?
Okay. Give me an idea of what they're supposed what you kind of imagine them as, and then I'll toss
I'm
names.
kind of imagining Garm as being a big, tall, like lanky sort of a dude. Like, have you ever seen the guy who plays Chewbacca in the newer Star Wars movies?
Peter Cushing. That's the old one.
That's not Peter. Peter Cushing is Grand Moff Tarkin.
Oh yeah, that's who Peter Cushing. It could be Peter Cushing though. He could play him. He's tall and lanky.
Yeah, bring him back from the dead. He'll play this guy, this young man.
When he was in his 20s or something, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like
resurrect Peter Cushing in his 20s. Look up a young. This is to the audience. Look up a young picture of Peter Cushing.
Now I'm doing.
I don't actually know if there are young pictures of him.
I'm looking it up because I've seen movies. Young Peter Cushing. Yeah, I could see him. I could see him doing it. He's looking a little too. He looks like a fancy boy, you know. He looks like he's not a hard sort of traveling guy. He's a little fancy lad. He probably.
You're totally wrong. You're totally wrong. He could definitely be a hard traveled guy. It's just the characters he's playing this. You just get some muck on his face.
Yeah, get some
mess
muck
up
on
his
his
hair
face.
a little bit. This could be a tough,
scary dude. You're right. And then, so we've resurrected Peter Cushing in his 20s to play this character, or the guy who plays Chewbacca, because that guy I think has a very good look for it, because he's very tall and he's very muscular looking. He seems like a nice guy. But my casting for Captain Dumont, and this isn't 100%, but I think it gives the right kind of vibe. Jack Black. Jablinski.
Interesting. I see. I'm not a big Jack Black fan as an actor, so I'm not totally behind it so far.
Exactly. I know. Jack Black, he's very good at playing Jack Black, but he's not very good at playing very many other characters besides Jack Black. So if you can think, you know who I just thought of and I think would be really, really good? Benedict Wong.
Benedict Wong would be fucking awesome. I love Benedict Wong.
Yeah, all right.
Holy shit.
Benedict Wong.
Great choice.
Yeah, all right, great.
He should be in all of our shows.
He should be. Cast him in everything. Benedict Wong's a fantastic actor. Cast him in everything.
I want to be the Christopher Nolan to Benedict Wong's
Tom Hardy,
Michael Caine, and his Michael Caine.
Okay.
Michael Caine's in like every Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah. If you ever direct a Batman movie, Benedict Wong will play Alfred.
He's 100% Alfred.
You know who Benedict Wong would be a really good choice to play in a Batman? Hugo Strange. I just thought of that.
I knew you were gonna say that. Yeah.
I think he would be a very good Hugo Strange. Give him those little glasses.
I wouldn't put him there. I feel like he's better as I like him better as like a tougher kind of character than a nerdy, shrivelly character.
Yeah.
You know?
Maybe. Who would you cast him as then? Killer.
Like if there's some sort of, I can't think of, but like he would be a great intimidating kind of like mastermind gangster type if he was a bad guy, but he's also be a decent Alfred, I think.
Yeah, he would be a good Alfred. I was joking before, but you're right. He would make a very. He's
a great like over the comms guy. You know, like while Batman's out there, he'd be great at making little jokes and stuff.
Yeah, maybe cast him as Commissioner Gordon. I see that.
I could see that maybe.
Give him a mustache.
Maybe.
Yeah, I'd see him.
I still like Alfred better.
Yeah. I think Alfred's probably the best.
Alfred was a random but perfect shout for him. I think he would be a decent Alfred. He probably needs to be a little older though.
Yeah.
I don't know how old he is right now.
I feel like he's in his 50s. Like he's not a young man. This is totally
unrelated. Depends how old Alfred is supposed to be. Or like how, how old Batman's going to be in this. You know? He's got, if you're Alfred, you got to be in your 70s or something.
Benedict Wong is 52 years old.
All right, in 20 years, when I'm directing Batman, the Batman 2. That's how long it's going to take.
It's going to take so long. It's great. Robert Pattinson will be in a wheelchair. Benedict Wong will be in like a hospital bed. You'll be like, they're perfect. Perfect Alfred and Batman. Okay, we have to get back to this show. So obviously we've just talked about them arriving on the island, and they do our into little introductory things and all that fun stuff. Then our journey begins. They set off, right? Garum acquires some horses and like maybe a carriage or something to help them get from one side of the island to the other side of the island. And I don't know if you twigged, but I said the blood red beaches. So in this universe, volcanoes, right? Instead of having black ash, the ash is like a deep red blood color, and so all the beaches, instead of having black sand like they do in Iceland, they have like deep red sand, which I think is just a cool image, you know?
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah,
that's cool. And the island, right?
Yes.
That they're on.
Yeah.
Geographically, if you could explain it to me.
I would say that it is a very, very small island in the northern, you know where Iceland is on the map?
Yeah.
There, but like move it up probably another like 400 miles like north. Like it's so cold. It's so inhospitable. And so all of the people who like are from there are pretty similarly cold and inhospitable, because you have to be to live in this harsh environment, you know?
Yeah. Okay. But is it mountainous?
I hadn't even thought about that, but maybe let's say it's one mountain, because it's a volcanic island, and so let's just say that the mountain in the center of the island is a volcano, right?
Okay.
A long dormant volcano, and it's not going to erupt in this show, obviously, but we just have kind of like in Morrowind, just have this huge volcano looming over everything else, but it's all snow covered, so it's just lots of reds and whites. You know, that's kind of the nature, right? Not tons of animals, or not tons of plants. There are some animals that have evolved to live on this universe, on this island, you know, sort of like foxes and wolves and stuff. You're not gonna find any sort of crazy animals, but just think of a dire wolf, or think of like a jackalope. Do you know what a jackalope is?
Yeah.
You do?
It's an animal.
It's an animal.
Looks like
It's a rabbit. It's a rabbit with
it's not
horns.
like exactly a rabbit though. It's got like fucking antler things.
Yeah, it's great. It's one of my favorite cryptids because it's stupid. It's a stupid cryptid. I love them. So yeah, jackalopes and
I mentioned the geographic thing because I was wondering, because you're going with all these kind of these unique colors for this landscape. Mm-hmm. I was gonna say you could also do like salt flats, so you have that like, you know, it's got that, you know, strange, you know, flat cracked surface, but also when you peel it out, like when people are running, like a horse is dashing across or anything, you know, any sort of vehicle or something.
Yeah.
You've got like the pink flying up.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Maybe we could have an area of the, because it's a road trip, so maybe there could be an area of the, because that makes a much better scene for the chase sequence that we're gonna have later in the show. Because our main characters, they're going to leave the town with the horses, and they're going to encounter some of these dire wolves and the jackalopes and other shit like that. And then they're going to keep going through, and they're going to be, you know, it's going to be more of a survival thing. There's not really going to be other people around. It's just going to be them against the elements. And they make their first stop at a tourist destination. Basically, like think of a ski lodge or whatever. And it's staffed by all of these like completely depressed locals, and all of these like moron tourists are, you know, just wandering around spending way more money than they need to. And Garum is able to get like lodging there because he's good buddies with somebody who runs it, right? And so that's our first night. Like our episode 2 is going to end with our two main characters, Garum and Genevieve, sharing a drink at the tourist bar, right? And they're going to be getting local prices because Garum is helping her out, and they're just talking about their pasts and their histories, and we kind of get the impression that Garum is an open book, whereas Genevieve pretends that she's an open book, but she's lying about a few things. You know, maybe we can get flashes of the past of her, like, you know, yelling at her partner, her significant other, her parents, her friends, you know, just like screaming and throwing things, and like them not believing in her, believing her, you know, her goal to find this treasure and all this stuff. And so we kind of get the impression that she's going a little treasure mad. She's gone a little cuckoo bananas for gold and platinum and other fun metals that are in there. And then and don't worry, I'm getting to the action sequence. And then they go to sleep. They wake up, the next episode, maybe, or could just a continuation of the second episode. Right, they discover these caravans. They leave the tourist destination, they discover these caravans along the roads that have been destroyed, and Garum is able to identify these destroyed caravans having been raided by the Three-Toe Gang, which has been a thorn in the side of the locals for the past couple of years, and it's run by, you know, Three-Toe Monty, who is a frostbite victim, and so he only has 3 toes left, and he runs a gang, right? And so they decide, oh, we need to keep our wits about us and that sort of thing. But they keep on moving, and maybe we can have a line where Garum like explains, oh, we're going into the salt flats, you know, prepare yourself, right? It's pretty, you know, this island's desolate, and the salt flats are the most desolate part of this island. And they, you know, are riding along through the salt flats, and they find this guy, and he's just like standing in the road shivering, you know, and he needs help. And so Garum and Dumas both say, like, we shouldn't stop. This is a trap. This is a trick. You know, if we stop this guy, he's going to have a bunch of buddies show up out of nowhere to attack us. And Genevieve says, no. I'm running this, and I'm not going to let just some guy freeze to death because you two are paranoid, right? And so they stop, and Genevieve, you know, gets the guy into the caravan, into their, like, you know, carriage, and she warms him up, she gives him a blanket, maybe pours him like something hot to drink, and he's like very thankful and all this stuff. And after they ride for like 5 minutes, the guy looks outside, you know, he, you know, does a signal, maybe with his hand, or maybe he nods or something, and just dozens of dudes pop out of the snow. They've covered themselves with these bright white blankets that keep them, you know, out of sight. Yeah. And the guy pulls out a gun, and he like holds Genevieve to the neck with a knife as he points the gun at Captain Dumas and Garum. And they're like, oh, god damn it, told you, Genevieve. And we can have a sort of a humorous conversation where Captain Dumas and Genevieve get into an argument like there isn't a man in the carriage with a gun. And you could tell it's all the whole time, all of the dudes, the members of the Three-Toe Gang, are like closing in. You can see them just sort of in the background. It's never called attention to, but they're just like encircling this, you know, carriage. And, you know, after their argument, Captain Dumas like distracts the guy, knocks him out, throws him out the thing, and fires a few rounds into the members of the Three-Toe Gang. And they start riding, you know, really hard. And as they're riding, they see that they think they've left the Three-Toe Gang behind, but they haven't, right? Three-Toe Gang, they had their horses also cloaked in these white blankets laying on the ground. They get them up, and they just start chasing them across the salt plains. And then we get that good shot you were talking about of our characters, like, kicking up this pink dust as they're being chased by this wild horde of raiders who are also kicking up just mountains and mountains of pink dust. Sort of like The Last Jedi, you know? Your favorite film.
Yep.
And so we have our characters, they're riding across, they're riding through, and we get, you know, it's a fun action sequence. Think Mad Max Fury Road almost, of our characters like getting up, and Garum and Captain Dumas and Genevieve are like fighting these guys off.Maybe Genevieve's got like a cool harpoon gun, right? Captain Dumas, he's an old school like seaman, and so he's got a sword, and he's sword fighting guys on the top of the caravan, and he's laughing hysterically because he loves this sort of shit, and he's like got a bottle of booze in the other hand, and he's just like having a ball. Garum is like keeping track of the horses, and like he fires a shotgun, knocks a guy off his horse, that sort of thing. But they eventually ride up a hill onto the side of the mountain, and as the fighting continues on the side of this mountain, they trigger an avalanche, right? Like one like super loud shotgun blast kills a guy, but triggers this avalanche, and we see our characters like riding as hard as they can away from the avalanche, but it's just they're not going fast enough, and they get this wall of snow just chasing them along the side of the mountain until they're eventually like just enveloped and overcome. And all of the three-toed gang have also been, they've been killed by this avalanche. But our crew are able to, they're able to survive. Maybe all three of them are trapped underneath the snow inside of the caravan, inside the cabin, right? And I hadn't even thought about that, but that's like a cool idea for sort of a bottle episode, is you put the cabin on its side, and so they can't sit in the seats or lay down or whatever. They have to lay on the side, on the glass or whatever. And they, sort of build a fire and try and keep warm. They're able to poke holes through the snow to let the smoke out. And then we can have our characters sort of bonding and growing together as people as they talk about their past, and maybe we get a little bit more of Dumas, right, talking about why he took this job, right? Like he's been working as a captain for years now. He's got enough money. He's doing this because he's never explored this island, and he's one of these guys who his whole goal in life isn't to make money or leave an impact even. It's just to see everything that there is to see. And so he's sort of, talking about that, and we get Genevieve sort of again obfuscating her goals really, and how much she wants this treasure. But Dumas has been traveling with her long enough to be like, I can see that you're fucking lying, and I'm not gonna push it now, but I know you're lying, and eventually you're gonna have to tell me, and eventually you're gonna have to tell him, because you promised him a way off this fucking island. And if you fuck him over, he's never gonna stop being pissed off about it. Like, you gotta keep your word with him. And Garum, again, open book of a guy. He's not the brightest bulb in the basket, but he's an open book. And that's nice to have a guy who's just like kind of what you see is what you get. And so our crew, they go a little native, surviving on the side of the mountain. The snow thaws enough that they're able to like dig their way out, and they begin just a long walk to the local camp. Basically, it's not even a town. It's kind of just like a place that travelers lodge for a night or two before moving on, right? And so our characters are working their way through that stuff. They're able to find this camp, and they, Garum has some hesitation, right? Because he's heard some weird things about these people, but he's like, just at this point in time, he's so exhausted that he's like, fine. They all go to sleep. And again, because this is a road trip adventure show written by Charles Long, the camp of mysterious strangers is a cult who are planning on sacrificing them to their dark snow god in order to guarantee another century of ice to keep the cult alive, or whatever. It's not or whatever. That's the point. That's what they're doing. And so our characters, right, maybe we have Genevieve and Garum, like, they're captured at the same time, and they get dragged into the cult thing, into the, like, main sacrificial hall, and they see Captain Dumas, and he's, like, all pissed off, and he's tied up, hogtied onto the ceiling, and they're like, we'll lower him down and slit his throat, and then we'll do you too, right? And so, of course, it's an adventure show, so our characters wriggle their way out of their binds and able to set off a series of a chain of events, right, sort of Pirates of the Caribbean style, that lets Captain Dumont down. He hits the ground really hard. He's not happy. Maybe he hits the ground on his stomach, throws up immediately into his rag that's in his mouth that's like been tied, and he's just having such a shitty time because he's injured, he's been beaten, he's still kind of drunk, and he's covered in vomit. But Garum and Genevieve like free him, and like they all get to a ATV, basically. I don't know how else I would describe it besides steampunk ATV made out of alien technology that that this cult has kept, hidden. They're like, we've been tinkering with this, but our main characters see it, and they're like, finally, some good fucking news, and they just, after killing a few cult members, they just peel their way out of there, right? And they're just like pretty happy that they didn't die, but they got to keep moving. They still have a journey to get to, and Captain Dumas is pretty pissed off. But Genevieve, like we've said before, she's just so obsessed that she can't stand the idea of stopping for even a minute to just like collect their bearings. She's like, we have to keep moving. And so they keep moving through the snow and through the ice and through the dangerous environment until they finally arrive at the city. And this is the only city on the island. And like, if you compare it to like France or New York or London, it's not really anything. It's more comparable to like Cincinnati, Ohio, right? Like in terms of actual real world cities, this is not very impressive, but for this island, right? This is the largest collection of people that they could ever imagine, The building is like 4 stories tall. That's the biggest building anyone's ever seen, right? And so they arrive in the city. They arrive at the city and find it buried in corruption, crime, and apathy, and are immediately hired as transport officers for an unknown package that gains them the attention of a local mob that chases them across the city until they are captured and brought to the crime lord, right? And so that's kind of our adventure for this episode, our misadventure, we'll say, is that they are immediately, contracted by one of Garum's, contacts to transport this, highly confidential piece of equipment from one place to another place, right? What the equipment is not important. It's just the fact that they've been contracted, and whoever's in charge of the crime in this city wants it, right? Mm-hmm. So our whole episode is them being chased and them fighting their way through, and we'll have a fun market sequence. Imagine the Indiana Jones market sequence in Raiders of the Lost Ark, but replace sand with snow. And it's we'll do that. It'll be fun. It'll be a fun market sequence. We'll have, they'll be going through apartment buildings, maybe we'll have a rooftop chase until they're finally brought down and captured by this crime syndicate, right? Mm-hmm. Then they are brought to the crime lord. Marlowe, the crime mistress. I just said crime 18 times. Takes the package and offers them it back, right, in exchange for an assassination, right? So she's like, we'll give you this package back. I don't want it that bad if you are able to kill this guy for me, right? We'll give you the night to think it over. So they are retired to the nicest place they've stayed since they left the boat, basically. Is this opulent hotel / mansion sort of a situation, all taken care of by Marlowe, the crime mistress. Because I was so sick of having male crime lords. I was like, let's get a crime mistress. Let's get a crime lady in here. And so our crew, obviously, they're happy to be comfortable. And Genevieve even considers committing this assassination. She's very heavily considering it because it will get her closer to her goal, right? Marlowe said that she would help them get to the place that they're trying to get to find the treasure, the beach of the Unforgiven. as we'll say. But they, Garum is so virulently against it. He's like, no, if you're doing this, I will not be a part of this. You'll have lost your crew, and I'll tell the authorities, right? Like, I will not take part in just a wanton murder for no other reason than because you think it's the best plan, right? Like, no, I'm drawing the line here. And so after a lot of deliberation and arguing, they decide that they're not going to assassinate this guy. And they decide that in order to really, to make this mission a success and like fully move forward, they have to steal the package back and finally transport it to where it needs to go, right? And this is where we're introducing our final character of the show. I'm not 100% sure about him simply because he gets introduced and then he does a bad thing, And so I'm kind of like, should I introduce him or should I just let them steal it themselves? But you tell me. Where is his name? Let me find his name. Sorry, everyone. Oh, Lord.
You can do it. I believe in you.
I don't think I can. All right.
Make it up now.
Bishamal. Bishamal is...
Ishmael.
Bishmael is he's a thief, right? And that's his whole thing. He's a foreign thief. He's French, maybe. But he is, he is a, Hamage is a no-good thief. There, I found his name. Who sees the crew as his nearly final chance at survival, right? So he's hired by the crew to help them steal this package back because he's, the only thief really in this city who is not under the control of Marlowe, the crime mistress, because he is he's not a very good thief. Like, in terms of his skills, there are people who outrank him by quite a bit. And so he's hired, and then we're gonna try and kind of do the heist episode of this series, in which they put together this, elaborate heist. I haven't thought of the heist, obviously, because this is just an outline. But they try and do the heist. They, maybe we have like a descendant on wires sort of a situation, and they fuck it up. Again, because none of them are trained thieves besides Hamage, who is not a very good trained thief. And so this is just another sequence of them being chased out of town. But they thought ahead this time, and Captain Dumas was able to sabotage all of the other horses and all of the other carriages that Marlowe had in her stables. And so they're able to take a couple of horses and get out of town pretty quickly without, being accosted by the crime mistress and her goons, her legion of goons. Having lost the package and without really anything else to do, Genevieve decides that she's bringing Hamage on, and maybe she's getting she likes Hamage more than Garum at this point, because Hamage is a lot more willing to just do what she says, right? Like, he has no real moral qualms. He's not arguing with her. He's not, like, talking about maintaining the sanctity of this island or, keeping these people safe. And that could be something that we see Garum do throughout the show, is she'll, like, say, for example, let's just blow it up to get somewhere. And Garum will not, because this is, a rock structure that stood here for 6,000 years. I'm not going to destroy it because it slightly inconveniences you, and we can see Garum sort of gaining more and more of an appreciation for his home culture as he sees, somebody who's really truly of the outside world just not caring at all for it. And I've been talking a lot, and so we're going to try and get towards the end of the show. How's that sound? Does that sound good, everyone?
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I like it. I'm enjoying it so far.
And so our final episodes, I'm assuming we'll do this as a two-parter, is our characters arriving at the Unforgiven Blood Red Beach, right? And maybe that's what our characters name it, maybe that's its name, right? And it's a beach that is filled with all sorts of like mystery and superstition from the locals. Nobody goes near it. And like while all of the sands on this island are red, this is truly like the deepest, darkest, most like bloody red that you can get, right? If, you know, the rest of the beaches on the island are what you get, like the color you get when you cut your hand, this is the color you get when you get stabbed in the stomach, right? This is like a deep, dark red, almost black, right? And our characters arrive and they're excited. And so they are able to find this enormous cave, right? Hidden along the side of on the sides of the beach. They find this enormous cave whose walls and entranceway are just covered, decorated with the bones of former adventurers and of the crew of Ragnar the Unforgiven, right? Because he was a vicious pirate Viking who charged his crew with guarding his treasure until the end of time. And he did this by killing all of them and stringing their bones up as a reminder to keep away from his treasure. And everyone's pretty hesitant about doing this, but Genevieve pushes forward and she, charges ahead and she just starts like going through and she's like reading through the inscriptions on the walls, which are written in an ancient tongue that she's able to translate, and she's able to like start disarming traps and just descending deeper and deeper into this like horrible catacomb of a cave. And as she's descending, as our crew is descending, we see two separate groups arrive at the island. One led by Marlowe, the crime mistress, right? And imagine she's in like this massive, opulent, beautiful caravan with dozens and dozens of highly trained, highly, armored guards and these beautiful white horses and all this stuff, right? And she arrives at the same time as the Three-Toe Gang arrives, led by, what was the name I gave the guy? I can't remember. Marion Three-Toe. No, that was a different guy. Marion Three-Toe. And this is like sort of the meeting of the two criminal masterminds of this island. One of which is, obviously, she's very wealthy and she's more of a mobster. Whereas we get Marion Three-Toe, and he's more of like a raider, of a marauder, sort of like a train robbing kind of a guy, too, like a little bit more redneck style. They all arrive on their horses, and at first there is going to be like a conflict between these two two criminal organizations, but they decide that they're both interested in hunting down and murdering every one of these Drix funded adventurers. And so they're going to do that first, and they decide to team up. Oh. And that's how the part one ends, with them like shaking hands and deciding to team up. Part two, our main characters are descending deeper and deeper into this caves. They're disarming all the traps. They're making sure that everything's okay, right? And they're getting through, and all of them are surviving. Maybe there's like a couple of close calls, like arrows firing out, missing people very closely to the, like, they just barely, miss them, or maybe it like cuts the side of your head or something, but it doesn't kill you. And as they descend further and further, literally, Genevieve descends further and further metaphorically into this sort of like a madness state, this obsessive state in which she's not even concerned about the safety of her men or her own safety. She's only concerned about getting to this treasure, right? So they descend further and further until they finally arrive at this massive door. Huge door, probably 30 feet tall, made out of this metal that is making her detector, right? I said that she had a detector to find the very specific kind of metal. It's making the detector go crazy. Turns out that this door is made of this metal, and it is a metal that is almost entirely unable to be destroyed or, wrecked. It needs to be picked. Like, the lock needs to be picked in order to get this metal open, right? And as they're trying to figure out what they're doing, what the trick is, how can they get through this door, right? Our two antagonists arrive. Marlowe and the Three-Toe Gang arrive. And you can tell there's a sizable fewer number of them than there were at the front. And that's because they've also been descending this cavern and dealing with the traps, but they don't have like an expert historian or archaeologist with them. They're just like bumbling through, people are dying, and there's nothing they can really do about it. And so they finally arrive, and that's when, dun dun dun, Hamage, our shitty thief, turns around and pulls a gun onto Genevieve and Garum, right? Turns out he's been a double agent this whole time. He messed up the heist on purpose and has been traveling with the crew because Marlowe knew that they weren't gonna commit this assassination. She knew that they were gonna pussy out, right? And so she needed a man on the inside. And so he gives all of the information that he has, right? Hamage finally, he reveals his true colors, and Drix, under duress, translates the final question on the door, the final clue as to get in, and she's able to figure out that the door demands a human sacrifice, right? Demands blood in order to open. And without even a second thought, Marlowe blasts Hamage's face off, and his dead body slumps onto this massive door. And as the blood soaks into the dirt and into the door itself, the eyes of these two skulls that have been adorned on the door begin to glow a bright red, and the door creaks open, right? That's our dun-dun-dun. All of our characters go in. Marlowe and the Three-Toe Gang burst in with our three main characters in chains and shackles tied up behind them, right? And they've discovered this massive hoard of gold. May as well be a dragon's hoard. There's just so much money and gems and jewelry and books and everything. This is everything Genevieve wanted and more, right? This is absolute jackpot. If she is credited with discovering this, she will be a legend in her fields, and she'll have her career will be made by this, right? Everybody's super impressed, right? And that's when Marlowe and the Three-Toe Gang, they start to argue and bicker a little bit. They're not super, they're not angry at each other yet, but it's well, we get 50, really? You think you get 50% of this? I'm the person who killed my own man to open the door. I'm the one who found them, right? My men died trying to get us down here, and you think you deserve the same as me? Really? Right? And so we kind of get a little bit of an argument between the Three-Toe Gang and the crime mistress. And as this argument is happening, Captain Dumas is able to pick the locks on his shackles and begins to work on Garum's, right? And he undoes Genevieve's leg shackles, so she's able to run away and escape if need be, but he chooses to leave her hands bound because right now he's not sure he can trust her, right? Because while Garum and Captain Dumas were unhappy and saddened and surprised at Hamage's death, even if he did betray them, right? Because he had been helpful and useful and friendly to them thus far. Genevieve, she just kind of didn't register at all what had happened. She just fully just didn't care, unblinking, just watched this man die and just was unaffected by it. And so Garum and Dumas, right, they get ready to figure out a way out of here. They pretend that they're still shackled, but they're not, and they're ready to escape, right? And just as they, try and start putting together a plan, the Three-Toe Gang and the crime mistress begin to fire at each other. Blam, blam, dozens and dozens of criminals just shooting at each other in this big, massive gold hoard. And they fire at each other, and there's blood, and there's death. and one of them, it doesn't matter who, manages to knock one of the adornments off of the wall. And that causes a chain reaction that begins to allow this entire place to crumble into nothing, right? And all of our characters are like scared and surprised, and they all start trying to figure out a way out of there. Captain Dumas and Gurm start fighting their way through, and they blast people, and they shoot guys, and all this stuff, and they're running through. Meanwhile, Genevieve grabs one tome out of the thousands of books and gold. She grabs one tome, stuffs it into her jacket pocket, and then starts following them. And she's running, and she's dodging all the traps, and there's also, there's criminals following her, and they're following all of them, trying to shoot them, but also try to escape. And so it's like this big, fun, action sequence, and it finally ends with them getting out of the, front of the cavern. First Genevieve goes, then Gurm, and then as the cavern collapses, Captain Dumas manages to just slip halfway through the doorway, but the rest of it falls on top of him, right? And so Genevieve, right, having seen one of her only friends crushed under these rocks, she falls back into her regular human, emotions, and she begins weeping and begging for him to come back and please don't leave her, all this stuff, and she realizes now, what a fool she's been and all this stuff. And we see, that's our final shot, is her weeping over Captain Dumas' body as we, fade to black, zoom out, fade to black, with Garum putting his hand on her shoulder and that sort of thing. Our epilogue is Genevieve and Garum riding on a boat, right? Genevieve is poring over this tome that she has, this ancient looking tome, and she closes it. We see the cover is Ragnar the Unforgiven's map of hidden treasures or whatever. We'll come up with a better title for the book, whatever it is. The important part is this is basically a map listing all of the places that Ragnar has hidden his gold throughout his adventures, right? So, turns out that this wasn't the only dragon's hoard he had. He has other dragon hoards all over the planet, right? And so Gurm and Genevieve are talking, and they're chatting, and they're sailing away from the island, and Gurm finally gives it one meaningful glance back at the island, and then he looks ahead into his new life. And we get happy, we're a little sad because Captain Dumas died, but we've got this kind of excited look for the future. And then we hear one distinctive step, and then we hear a knock of wood on wood as Captain Dumas is revealed to have lost a leg, and he's got a peg leg now, but he's still a hard-drinking, hard-fighting pirate seaman, right?
Yeah, and he grabs the book from her and says, "Don't touch my fucking book." And then
there you go. And that's the end of the show. The Unforgiven.
I didn't expect that. I thought he was dead.
Yeah, me too. And I was right, and I was like,
you too?
No.
I hope... Oh, okay, when you're writing it.
Yeah, I was expecting him to die by the end, but I was like, you know what? No. Everybody lives.
Fuck it.
Yeah, fuck it. But that's my show, The Unforgiven.
That'd be, if you get confirmed for season 2 before they finish the show, you should have that. And instead, the first scene of season 2 is
Captain Dumas
him grabbing the fucking book.
Yeah, don't touch my fucking book.
Stepping on the deck, grabs the book.
Yeah, I like that. But yeah, that's the show I've written. I feel like it's pretty fun. It's not setting the world on fire or anything, but I think it's a fun adventure show. Set in a cool,
I liked it. It was pretty different
universe.
than some of your other ones. I mean, road trip's a common thing that we both like doing, but this one was very different and the sort of maybe kind of feel like National Treasure, but not at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a fun little show, fun little adventure show.
What was the title one last time?
The Unforgiven.
The Unforgiven. You heard it here first. And last.
The Unforgiven, everybody. Benedict Wong, Wednesday Addams, and Chewbacca.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ortega and Benedict Wong, the combo that no one thought they needed.
No one thought they would exist, but it should. Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for listening to the Very Reasonable Pilots podcast. I've been your host, Charles. Along with me has always been my co-host, editor, producer, co-pilot, gunner, navigator, orator, and podcasting associate, Jacob Cloth. If you like what you heard here and you want to hear more, please give us a like, a follow, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, tell your cat, and remember, we will be here next week with a brand new televisual series for you to imagine and enjoy, hopefully on time this time. Thank you all, and have a good night.
Goodbye.